charge about as much for a watt high pressure sodium as Central Hudson Gas and Electric. But if you look at the last column on the right, you'll see at the end of the day for an LED light that the customer owns, the charges are very similar. But on Engrid's proposal for an LED tariff, they actually charge more for this light if they convert it to an LED. And in addition to that, they have the ability to collect from you any unrealized depreciation or amortization, stranded costs that they have in the fixture they haven't collected through the rates. So you still have to pay them something to convert your lights to LEDs. Next. So one of the questions that always comes up is a couple things. One is, why would I want to go to LED technology? If you own the lights, then you are responsible for their maintenance and upkeep. And obviously, you want to reduce that expense as much as possible. So in addition to the 60 to 70% energy savings, which is a direct savings to you because once you own the lights, you're billed based on the energy they use, you're also going to get improved lighting and safety. And one of the reasons for that is that LED lights are very directional. The ability of a LED fixture to direct the light that it puts out onto the roadway and not every place else is greatly improved. So you wind up with much lower light outputs, but much better overall lighting. Importantly is the improved reliability. A typical high-intensity discharge system, which high-pressure sodium, mercury vapor, metal halides all fall into the HID family, have failure rates of around 18 to 20% per year. Where an LED system, the averages are less than 0.5% to 0.8%. In over the past 4 years, where they've installed 140,000 of these LEDs, they experienced 0.2% each year. So 0.8% is a little conservative. And in some communities, the other reason to go to LEDs is the future applications of control technology. So as part of the LED conversion process, I would always recommend the selective fixture that's set up for controls, whether you purchase the controls today or not. Control technology, unlike high sodium or HID lights, when they go out and you turn them back on, they take 12 to 15 minutes to come back up to full power. LEDs can be turned off, they can be dimmed, and they come back on instantly. So what this has led to is people installing controls that allow you to dim the lights after certain hours or to turn them off or to make them brighter. You can make them flash. You can use them to direct people to evacuate them from a community. And now they're also beginning to look at that network, the communication network, to do other things. So, for example, in one community, we're going to use the street lights to read the water meters. Also, there are companies that are integrating the communication system that they have in the AMI electric meter systems into the street lights. So now the whole thing works together. So I would recommend that you start an LED that is prepared for that kind of technology, because we have no idea where it's going to go and what the future benefits might be. Next slide. Once it gets asked is, well, things keep getting cheaper, and that's true. They keep more efficient. That's also true. We've seen, for example, since 2010, the price of a typical high pressure replacement LED has gone from about $286 down to about $124 a day. And in addition to that, we've seen the energy efficiency of these lights go from in the low 70s to now over 100 lumens per watt. Why wait? I mean, these things are going to get cheaper and they're going to get more efficient. So why wouldn't I wait? And this chart, I hope, kind of addresses that. And what I've done is I've assumed, which is very aggressive, that these lights get 15% cheaper and 15% more efficient in just 1 year. And so look at it as you could buy lights and own lights and maintain them and save about $128 90, this is in Central Hudson service territory, 193 per year. It converted to a 20-watt LED, which would be the current appropriate wattage for a 70-watt high-pressure sodium, then you would save $168 a year. So your opportunity loss is about $39.20. If you look at what the potential value of waiting is, that's down at the bottom. What I've done is I've looked at a reduction in a fixture cost of 15%, an increase in the energy efficiency by 15%, but I have to assume labor is going to go up. So net value saved by waiting is only $17.75 versus $39.20. So the fact is, the numbers will say it doesn't wait. This acquiring asset and converting to LEDs, and you'll never catch up if you wait a year or even wait 2 years. So it's really right the time to be doing this. Next slide. Collaboration. Within the Central Hudson, there's an awful lot of communities with only a few hundred streetlights. This presents problems in that it's very difficult to get real pricing and to get benefits that you would get from having a collaborative. And what I'd like to talk to you about is a program that we set up in Rhode Island called PRISM, the Program for Rhode Island Streetlight Management. What PRISM does is it centrally manages everything. We went out on a single contract to hire a contractor to do all the installation and follow-on maintenance. We quotes for materials for all of the member communities, and we're coordinating all the work in each of the communities. We're handling all the administration with the utilities, we're doing all the incentive programs. We've got a call center where we receive calls for outages and any repairs. And basically, it's all being centrally managed. So from a community's perspective, it's a single phone call to solve a problem. I'm going to save significant staff time. In addition to that, much like MHSC, where Jen has been performing this role, it provides expert representation to the Public Service Commission, and it watches out for what's going on legislatively to protect the member communities. And obviously, the PRISM program, each city has a representative that serves on the board of directors, so everything is open book. Communities make the decision as to how it's going to be managed and operated, and see it's loyal to its members. So next slide. An example of the benefit of by comparison. We had a couple of communities in Rhode Island that they could do this better by going out on their own. And so 2 communities joined together and they did a joint procurement. And so what I've done here is I've compared the price they got to the price that PRISM got. You can see, because we represented in our first round 38,000 streetlights, we did considerably better than they did. I have 2 case studies just so you get an idea of what it might look like for communities, Kingston and Ulster. 2,421 lights in Ulster, 350. The return on investment is about 3 years, which is all good. The estimated project costs, and these include the installation cost as well as the equipment cost. The not included in here is a contingency for unexpected or emergency repairs. For example, if you have a drunk driver that plows into a pole and knocks it down, the utility is replacing a utility pole and the light has to be moved from the old pole to the new pole. The council approves a new light where one doesn't exist. You have a storm and a branch knocks the light off the pole. Those kinds of things I always recommend that a committee carry a contingency fund for, and at the end of each year they can decide what they want to do with any of those funds they didn't need, rather than have to appropriate additional money that they didn't expect they might need. challenges we face is the lack of consistency in what the utilities require and filings, the nature of charges and that sort of thing. We have to sure how the utility is going to charge for a LED light. You can purchase an LED light that has what's called a Q diode or has an internal ability to adjust its output. Leotech, for example, produces one with 3 different possible settings. So you could wind up with one light you use for 3 different applications. The question is, how will the utility bill for that? Will it what the maximum possible is, or will they bill it based on what it's set for? And these are conversations that we have to have with the utilities. You currently don't have any provisions for part-time dimming. They don't have any provisions for the control devices that meter the streetlight energy usage. So these are still issues that will need to be addressed in the future. Also, some requirements that they impose that in my view are unreasonable, but we're going to have to live with them, and we have to make sure that our contractors are qualified and understand what those requirements are in terms of fusing and other things. In some cases, I've run into utilities that have required that a light be de-energized by the utility before you install a replacement fixture. Fortunately, we're not facing that here, but it's happened. And as I mentioned, there's no provision right now for the control technology and what's called the Internet of Things. IoT was also called smart cities, but I think because somebody used that name, they decided to go to something more generic, so they came up with IoT. So you'll hear both. You know, the smart cities is the old term, the new term is Internet of Things. Next. My contact information, if people have questions, I'm always delighted to chat with you and to try to do my best to answer your questions.
Thanks, and as we know, you will get a lot of questions. All right, we're going to move now to Jen Metz.
So I'm going to focus mainly on the utility side of things, the LED options that are available through the utilities currently, and tariff developments with regard to customer ownership of the lights and taking over ownership. As George made clear, there's enormous benefits to be gained from converting to LEDs in terms of cost savings, energy savings, traffic and pedestrian safety, and other benefits he mentioned. Next slide. One of the challenges is that most local governments don't own their streetlights. 74% of the lights in the state are owned by the utilities. So for these municipalities, and by the way, those municipalities, for instance, in Con Ed territory, downstate, many of them have already started moving forward with LED conversion because the economics are so clearly favorable and the environmental benefits are extremely favorable. But for the munis who do not own their own lights, there are 2 pathways to conversion. You can upgrade to LED, utility-owned LEDs where they're available. Now, only Orange and Rockland and Central Hudson offer LEDs. Though by 2017, all the utilities should have some kind of LED option in place. The second pathway is to purchase the streetlight system, as George had mentioned, and convert to LEDs yourself. And while this second pathway might sound daunting, the cost savings, as George has indicated, are substantial. And the process of purchasing streetlights the streetlight system has also been made a little easier by 2015 state legislation that has amended public service law. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next slide. Those are very dim, but hopefully you can see the numbers. We're going to first take a look at the LED options that are available, beginning with Orange and Rockland utilities. Just to give you a little bit of background, ONR was the first to offer LEDs back in 2011, but the 2 options that offered LED and options, they were different size lights, were so oversized in terms of their wattage and so expensive. The Public Service Commission, in ONR's most recent rate case, directed the utility to develop new LED options. So in April, ONR submitted a proposal to the PSC for 6 LED lights with different wattages to replace their 8 most common street light and wattages in their service territory. Unfortunately, this new tariff suffers pretty much the same problems as the 2011 tariff. As you can see in this example, these LED replacement for its 70-watt HPS, 100-watt mercury vapor, and 150-watt HPS fixtures are significantly oversized if you compare them to the optimal LED or best practices As a general rule, LEDs today are so efficient that you can replace a streetlight with an LED that has a 65% lower wattage than the HPS, and you can replace the even less efficient mercury vapor fixture with an LED wattage that has as much as an 85% lower wattage. There's always going to be some variation depending on, the make and model of the LED and lighting design considerations, but this level of energy reduction generally can be achieved with products in today's market, and they are not reflected in this tariff. Next slide. ONR's proposed LEDs also cost a lot more than the existing lights, even when you take into account the energy savings from installing more efficient fixtures. As you can see here, on a per fixture basis, the company's LED replacement for 70-watt HPS and 100-watt mercury vapor is almost $30 more annually than the light that it's replacing. So when you have hundreds of lights, this adds up pretty quickly. Next slide. So just to summarize, the proposed LED, what ONR has proposed for its new LED options are oversized compared to best practices wattages, which reduces the energy and financial savings that could be achieved. Fixture charges are also higher. Their upgrade plan is very low. They upgrade the lights at no cost to municipalities through the course of routine maintenance, which can take many years. If the municipality wants to accelerate that conversion, it can make a request to do so, but it must pay the stranded costs of the existing lights, which is about $134 per light, plus the materials and labor costs of installation. Our consortium, Hudson Streetlight Consortium, has filed comments with the Public Service Commission, basically calling for this proposal to be rejected, and we've made some recommendations to improve on the tariff proposal. The final tariff is due out in February of 2017. Next slide. First introduced LED options in July 2015, and its tariff on the whole is much better than ONR's. However, as you can see from the chart, Central Hudson's LED options are also a bit oversized in terms of wattage, again representing a lost opportunity for additional financial and energy savings. Next slide. Central's rates are much better than ONR's proposed rates. The annual fixture charges are slightly less than the lights they're replacing for 3 of the 4 LEDs that the utility is offering. Not shown here is their highest wattage fixture, which actually costs more, but there are far fewer of those in the service territory. When you take energy savings into account from their proposed fixtures, municipalities will see savings. They'll have pretty significant savings on the conversion to Central Hudson LEDs, just as shown by these examples. The total estimated bill savings takes into account both the fixture charge and the estimated cost of supply based on the wattage of the fixtures. Next slide. Compared to ONR's tariff, Central Hudson does suffer from the same oversizing problem, but maybe to a lesser degree. Municipalities will see greater savings result of lower rates for the LEDs and also through energy savings, the LED fixtures themselves. And they, like our Central Hudson, is going to upgrade in the course of routine maintenance. It's already doing this. This could take, by the company's estimate, up to 8 years for a full conversion. If municipalities want to accelerate that, they can pay. They have to pay the stranded costs of the lights that are being replaced, which is $117 per light. They have the option to amortize those costs on their bills over 5 years so that they can pay through their savings. Next slide. I have mentioned where things stand with NYSEG. NYSEG currently has no LED option. In their rate case, they proposed one, but the Department of Public Service staff sent the utility back to the drawing board due to high costs, inflated expenses, and inadequate research into their proposed fixture choices. NYSEG has been directed to file a new LED tariff by December 15th next month, and we very much recommend that if you are in NYSEG territory, take a look at that proposal and file comments, because the Public Service Commission and Department of Public Service staff would really like to hear what municipalities' thoughts are on it. In fact, the utility had been directed to consult with municipalities on their proposals. I don't know if they actually have done that, but we'll let you know when that proposal is filed with the Public Service Commission, and I'm sure we'll be submitting comments as well. Next slide. Two pathways to LED conversion: by upgrading to utility-owned lights or purchasing the lights and upgrading yourself. The latter will end up being more cost-effective. I think George did a pretty good job of showing that to be the case. New York State Comptroller study audited the streetlight vouchers of 5 municipalities and compared the cost to the cost and savings from purchasing the street and owning the streetlight system. In fact, they would save $13 million over the life of the 20-year bond to purchase the lights. And this is just the existing lights. The comptroller study did not look at actually upgrading to LEDs and the additional savings from those upgrades. In Massachusetts, where municipalities have already gone through this process and converted to LEDs, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for Boston found that they were seeing savings on the order of 70%. That's including the LED conversion savings. Next slide. This is just to show. Oh, it's a little hard to read, but
we'll correct it.
Yeah, but this chart just illustrates the difference in cost between renting the fixtures, continuing to be utility customers for streetlights, and the rates charged if you own the lights yourself. And you can see this dramatic difference in the case of the Central Hudson 70-watt HPS fixture charge is $160. And if you own the light, the charge would be $24.65. So most of the cost is in essentially renting the fixture. A very small percentage of that cost is actually pays for the delivery of the electricity. Next slide. Your streetlight system or considering it, you should know that the process has been made easier by this 2015 legislation that has required that utilities spell out in their tariffs the process and requirements for the transfer of the streetlight system to the municipalities. A utility tariff, by the way, is a document that lays out all the utility rates, requirements, and procedures. And so these have to be approved by the Public Service Commission It's better to have it laid out in the tariff rather than left entirely to the discretion of the utility. So it was a positive development. And if you want to take a look at your utilities light tariff, you can access it on the Public Service Commission website. So the utilities have all amended their tariffs to spell out this process. And purchase is negotiated between the municipality, and the procedures and requirements are now more standardized. But for whatever reason, the utility is not moving forward with the purchase process. As a result of this new law, municipalities now have the option to petition the PSC to help move this process forward. So there's backup if needed. I just wanted to note that before these tariffs were even in place, a number of municipalities in the Mid-Hudson region have recently purchased their streetlight systems, including the cities of Kingston, Poughkeepsie, and Beacon in Central Hudson Territory, and the towns of Clarktown and Orangeburg in ONR Territory. Next slide. The period when the Public Service Commission was considering these new tariffs, we submitted comments aimed at improving transparency and leveling the playing field between the utility and municipalities in negotiations to purchase the streetlights. The utilities had a really big advantage because they controlled all of the information about costs. It also drew attention to particular costs that some utilities were imposing in these negotiations that we felt were unfair. And by the way, in the comments submitted, we had to submit separate comments for each utility service territory, but in our comments on the Central Hudson tariff, we submitted them jointly with the Ulster County Association of Town Supervisors and Village Mayors. When the PSC issued its order on the proposed tariffs, they ruled in support of a number of our recommendations. And these include to increase transparency in purchase negotiations. Utilities must now provide local governments with all of the data behind the cost estimates, so you can determine yourself whether it's fair and reasonable. Utilities are also now prohibited from making municipalities pay for a field audit of utility lights as a condition of the purchase, which utilities were doing. And utilities cannot charge the municipality for instance by the utility of the municipality's work when it installs LEDs or works on the street lights. So that's also very important, and another cost that was added in negotiations in some negotiated agreements to purchase and operate the system. So these were important wins that are going to reduce the cost to municipalities of taking over their systems. To give you a bare bones overview of the process, it begins with a request by the municipality for an estimated purchase price. And under the new tariff, the utility has to respond within 90 days. The municipality must then have their 180 days to consider that offer, but it then needs to signal within that time period, that it's going to move forward. Basically, that estimate from the utility will expire at that point, so you have to respond then. But it should be noted that that you want to move forward does not mean that you're accepting the price. This is all a negotiation, and we can talk about in the Q&A about what's going on in specific utility territories. So once the next step is the utility provides a purchase, operating, and/or operating agreement to the local government for its consideration, and the negotiations commence. Once a mutually acceptable agreement has been reached and signed by the parties, the utility then files it with the Public Service Commission for review and approval. This process can take, it's important to note, up to 3 months if it involves less than 100 or 1,000 streetlights. It could be as much as 4 to 6 months for sale of over 1,000 streetlights. So upgrading to LED streetlights promises substantial environmental and community and economic benefits. Municipalities who currently rent their lights from the utility have two possible pathways: upgrading to utility LED options if and when they're available, or two, purchasing their street lights and converting to LEDs. Utility LED options vary by service territory, and some very limited right now, but new options are expected, at least in ONR and NYSEG territory, in 2017. Municipal ownership model is a very promising alternative.
All right. Thank you, Jen. So before we get to you, I'm just going to take a peek at the chat here to see if there's anything urgent we need to attend to. Okay, these are just questions we can address during the Q&A, so thank you everybody for those. Also, if I can say it at the beginning, we're going to share the slides with you, of course, afterwards, and we will correct the slides that are too light, because they look fine when I was preparing this, but obviously when they're on a big screen, they are too light. So Nina, you are unmuted. Good morning. Oh, hold on. There. Good morning. Yes, I can.
Well, okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you today. Pat, can you advance the slides? Thank you. So the good news is, for those municipalities interested in acquiring their lights and converting to LED, there are a number of different financing and implementation options available. And in fact, the range of choices is growing as the very attractive risk-return profile of streetlight conversions is increasingly recognized. So we'll speak very briefly this morning about a few different ways to affect this energy upgrade, including municipal debt, funding by a municipality, and performance contracts, collaborating with New York Power Authority through an energy services contract, municipal, and some additional third-party options that are being developed. And for those municipalities that need to acquire their existing lights as part of a conversion effort, that acquisition can be bundled into these various financing approaches, or alternatively, a municipality can choose to fund that acquisition separate from the conversion. Next. Great. So the first approach that we'll talk about is issuance of municipal debt. There are municipalities that have moved forward with streetlight conversions, financing the project in this manner. And municipalities can take the form, in this case, either of bonds or of short-term bond anticipation notes or bands. And some considerations are, this is a very low-cost way to finance this project. The streetlight project financing needs would be bundled with other capital requirements of the municipality rather than financed in a standalone basis. Issuing debt, of course, does impact borrowing capacity and may impact debt rating. And in considering whether use of bands or the longer-term bonds is more appropriate, it's useful to give consideration to what the project payback period is. Next. So there are a couple of municipalities that have issued debt to finance their projects that I'll touch on briefly. One is the City of Kingston, where the Kingston Common Council offers bonding of $2.1 million to both acquire the utility-owned street lights and convert those lights, plus some additional lights that the city already owned, to LED. This is a project that's currently underway. The PSC is reviewing the proposed acquisition, and the City of Kingston started their procurement process for the LED conversion. Next slide. The next example is the village of Dobbs Ferry in Westchester County. And the ferry affected its conversion in 2 phases. In 2011, it was the first municipality in Westchester County to install a significant number of LED streetlights. And it did that by issuing a bond anticipation note. The W installed those 300 lights themselves, and the project payback period of 3 years was shorter than the planned term of the financing. So that's a very attractive way to go. This year, the village completed the streetlight conversion using capital funds, including a balance from the first LED conversion project, which was less costly than had been originally anticipated, and additional bond anticipation note. And in this case, the village decided to have the vendor furnish and install the streetlights rather than doing the installation internally. Next. Another option that some municipalities can consider is self-funding the project. Use capital funds or operational funds in addition to anticipated or accrued savings from early phases of streetlight conversion to further conversion efforts. Some of the things to think about with regard to self-funding are that the approach is likely to result in an incremental conversion. So you would likely lose the economies of scale of a larger project, and you also won't have the opportunity to capture the full conversion savings quickly. And as George was discussing in his presentation, the savings associated with converting more quickly are significant, and so you lose some of that in this instance. Municipalities won't have sufficient budget flexibility to pursue this approach. For those that do, it's valuable to consider starting with the higher wattage lights to capture more savings more quickly. One municipality that has used this approach is actually New York City, and they have allocated savings from early phases of streetlight conversion to support later phases of that effort. Next. The next way to move forward that's been used again by some municipalities in the Mid-Hudson region is an performance contract. And that's a way of financing energy improvement projects with the savings that will be achieved for the implementation of the project. Some key characteristics of this approach include its turnkey service. A municipality would contract with an energy services company called an ESCO, and that ESCO take care of the project from soup to nuts: investment grade energy audit, implement the project, and measurement and verification of the results. The ESCO may arrange or provide project financing, which often takes the form of a municipal lease. One of the interesting things to consider about an energy performance contract is that it allows a municipality to take a portfolio approach with a range of energy-related projects that can all be bundled together in a single energy performance contract. Talk about one municipality that has recently done this. An energy performance contract provides guaranteed savings. The ESCO actually guarantees the level of savings that will be achieved, and those savings need, at minimum, to be sufficient to cover the cost of the project. And contracts are not necessarily available for very small streetlight conversion efforts. Next. So the city of Yonkers is the first municipality in this area to convert all streetlights, and it did that back in 2012 through a energy performance contract. It was an $8.7 million project, and that project is being paid for by the city of Yonkers through a 10-year lease using energy savings. The net savings to the city are almost $1 million a year, which is quite remarkable. And through that one project alone, they reduced its municipal greenhouse gas emissions by about 10%. So the next example is the town of Mamaroneck that has recently undertaken an energy performance contract. It's a 2-year contract, as you see, $7.35 million. And the town decided to tackle a host of different energy-related projects that they wanted to accomplish. And so that includes projects with significant energy savings, most notably streetlights, and other projects that might have no energy savings at all, including, for example, a generator upgrade. So in this case, the energy performance contract enables the savings from projects like the streetlight upgrade to fund the aspects of the portfolio of projects that are included under the performance contract. MEMEC financed this performance contract through issuance of a bond rather than securing the funding through the ESCO, because they felt that financially they do better doing it in that manner. Next slide. The next way to move forward involves working with the New York Power Authority, and NEPA can provide municipalities with a range of energy-related services, including energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, as well as energy audits and feasibility studies. NEPA support specific for streetlight conversion projects includes turnkey service, include procurement and project management services. If a municipality desires, they can also add optional lighting design services. And of course, NYPA oversees the whole project. They can provide low-cost straight financing, either in the form of a loan or tax-exempt municipal lease. And they can also finance the purchase of existing lights as part of a conversion effort. So an example is the town of Clarkstown, which has recently negotiated the purchase of its close to 4,000 streetlights from OR. And just recently, the town entered into an agreement with NYPA to manage the conversion of those streetlights to LED. The total savings from both the town owning streetlights and the energy and maintenance savings related to LED conversion are expected to be $900,000 annually. So that's another very attractive project. Next is tax-exempt municipal leases. The characteristics here include that they can be structured to be off-balance sheet. The cost savings gained through conversion are to exceed the municipal lease payments. At the contract term, the municipality owns the installed equipment. And these can also be used to finance the acquisition of existing lights. So tax-exempt municipal leases are familiar as an equipment finance tool They haven't necessarily been used as much as in New York State as much as they have in some other locations for streetlight financing, for instance, from energy performance contracts. This is something that George has a lot of experience with in some of the states that he has worked, and it's an option that should be considered by municipalities. Next. So, in addition to these known options, there's some other third-party ownership models that are being developed, and some of them are being supported by the New York Green Bank, with companies and offering project implementation and financing for a range of energy improvement projects, including streetlight finance. Characteristics of this approach may include also key solutions. The contract with the municipality may be structured as an energy service agreement rather than a lease or loan. In case payments are based on energy saved, so based on megawatts. And in this case, financing is also available off balance sheet. Now, there are a host of different options that municipalities can consider financing this really important energy upgrade. And in speaking with municipalities that have used each of these approaches, the municipalities have been very happy with the approach that they have selected. So there isn't one right answer in terms of the best way to finance a project. Yet a municipality has to consider their particular circumstances, their priorities, and compare those to the characteristics of the different forms of financing that are available. But some of the considerations, of course, include the cost of that financing, municipal borrowing capacity, internal project management capacity. Some of the approaches like energy performance contracts or the NYPA approach are robust project management services. Of course, a municipality pays for those services, so it's a question of evaluating the cost of that versus the value that's provided. It's worthwhile considering the value of a performance guarantee, which certainly is greater for projects where there's real uncertainty about what the energy savings are likely to be. As George has pointed out, collaborative procurement efforts reduce project costs, and therefore the amount that has to be financed in order to effect a conversion. And collaboration working alongside other municipalities in a procurement effort may also expand the range of financing options that are available to those participating communities. Next slide. So very much. And now we'll do the wrap-up.
A question that came in that we may not get to later. Somebody's just trying to evaluate your different examples. What is the approximate population of Dobbs Ferry?
Dobbs Ferry is about 11,000 people.
Okay.
And about 700 streetlights.
Okay, great. Now, I'm going to put you on mute now, but you know how to reach me. All right, so let's see here. We're going to just run to a look at what this consortium is doing and how we can be of assistance to you. Our purposes are, multifaceted. Of course, we're trying to help cities, towns, and villages understand the benefits of LED streetlight conversion, assess which pathway is right for your community. And because of the terrific technical folks that we have on the team, we can provide some assistance with design and technical support. and we can help facilitate cost-effective upgrades. Now, before I go on, this will come up on subsequent slides as well, but I want to acknowledge that today we have attending people from both inside and outside the Hudson Valley, and we're excited to have everyone. This is a project funded for the Mid-Hudson, but as you'll see, I'll be talking about other resources in your communities who can help you your opportunities here. So we are covering the lower and upper Hudson Valley region, cities and towns and villages served by Central Hudson, Orange and Rockland, and NYSEG. And so we lay claim in this project to, I think it's 10 of the counties, as you see there. A project, however, that is very important for you to know about sooner rather than later is that we are operating on a parallel path with NYSERDA's new Clean Energy Communities program. LED streetlights figure prominently in the program as so-called high-impact actions that municipalities can take toward sustainability. And there are official incentives for moving in this direction. They are competitive funds, and there's much more to say about that, but we will just do a top line of it today, but hopefully you will investigate. To us, we are beginning, as many of you know, with a survey. So we thank the 42 municipalities that have answered the survey. We're going to, when we send out the slides, invite you to take the survey if you haven't already. Have a dozen municipalities that have joined the consortium. We're very excited about that, and we will be organizing a kickoff conference call to talk about what we can do. There is no cost for consortium membership. It's allowing us to be better serve you. Okay, yes, survey. Thank you, Jen. That's an excellent reminder. Surveys, I know I get too many of them, and so we just wanted to remind you it takes really less than 5 minutes. We're trying to gather some basic information about what you're doing thus far on the street lighting issue. We are convening a steering committee of interested municipal leaders. Again, this is not something that we intend to take up a lot of your time, but we are looking for input and direction as to what your needs and interests are. And then we are, to the extent possible, facilitating municipal streetlight inventories with education on the topic. We are strong believers that, as Jen Metzger did in Rosedale, as Tom Conrad led the project in Marble, a great starting place for conversion is to inventory your streetlights so you know what your opportunity is. We'll talk more about that. And a very important piece that we're putting together through the leadership of Jen Metzger is an options study, which is going through the technical and financial options. She's very capably assisted by Nina and George on that, and she'll have that out. What is the deadline? On the spring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, back over to our friends at Clean Energy Communities. I am going back and forth because I am to illustrate that we're operating on parallel tracks. Under Clean Energy Communities, the municipalities that wish to go for this high impact action as a step in the ladder toward funding would be documenting that a minimum of 50% of municipal and utility-owned Cobra-head-style streetlights have been converted to LEDs within the geographic jurisdiction. The documentation includes showing the number of streetlights converted, the proportion of converted Cobra head to regular Cobra heads, and be in this action, or to participate in this high impact action, you have to have at least 10 fixtures converted, which would mean you'd be from a pretty small community, but we're working with some very small communities. So, to show you what's possible in terms of some financial assistance at the same time. continuing work. George Woodbury, we are developing and disseminating requests for proposal that can be used by your community, probably with some amendments, but they are baseline documents that you'll be able to use. We're going to assist municipalities with response review when you out RFPs. And it is our very strong intention to administer a joint procurement of LED fixtures. And that's the purpose of the steering committee, to begin planning that. And we will certainly keep you apprised of our progress. In time, we're doing everything we can to get the word out about our activities. We have an e-newsletter, which I'll send again. We have webinars, and we will have in-person workshops. We have a very strong commitment to NYSERDA. Our effort to share this information statewide, and so that is why I was delighted to see people from other regions sign up for this call. So, we're asking people to join the Mid-Hudson Streetlight Consortium. Again, it's a 5-minute investment, but what it allows us to do is report back to NYSERDA that we have this core group, this core constituency that we are providing advice and decision support to. And so, again, we're going to be helping you with putting together optimal streetlight design, because that is the path toward savings, to test your financial options, your technical considerations, and your maintenance planning. So that is a big part of it as well. There is absolutely no cost to join our consortium, and we're sharing all the tools with you, the options report, the procurement documents, and other products we develop. Now, again, on my too light typeface here, I wanted to introduce the Clean Energy Community Coordinators. I think most of them are on the call today, but I am providing their contact information here. And their job is to assist you and other municipalities in moving toward the high impact actions, which do include LED streetlights. So I'll make sure you get this information. And the way to get started with us is to just drop me a line or give me a call. Now we're going to take some questions. Let's see. So some of the things have been covered already. Just reviewing. I'm going to unmute our friends here. Hold on. Get back over here and do that. Muted. And you're unmuted. Okay. So Amanda would like to know how George calculated the purchase price per light for the Kingston Ulster examples. And before you get started, George, I just want to say that one thing we really value is our attendees' time. And so we're going to take as many of these as possible, but I'm going to reserve the right to tell my colleagues that they just have to write their answers. All right, George, did you want to note something there?
That Central Hudson has indicated that their purchase price for the fixture is $117, and then if you want to also buy the mast arm and the other associated equipment, that's additional $117 for a total cost of $234. I've done an independent evaluation of what the purchase price should be for Kingston.
Right. Yeah.
Just wanted to note that one of our participants on the call had mentioned that National Grid offer utility-owned LED lights right now as of June 1st. We are focused on the Mid-Hudson region, so I only am looking at NYSEG, ONR, and Central Hudson. But for those participants on the call that are in National Grid territory, it's good for you to know that.
In connection with that, as you know, I had a chart that shows you the fact that in many cases, N-Grid is charging more for an LED light, and you have to pay for the unamortized investment of the fixture you're removing. So there's really no benefit to the N-Grid offered LED program.
Okay. Do you want to note
Sure.
this question?
So there was a question that said, a participant asked who verified the results that LEDs provided by utilities were oversized. So this, our assessment is based entirely on just the efficacy of the fixtures available in today's market, which is, how illumination they can provide given a certain level of wattage. And there are fixtures, today's fixtures are have a high efficacy, and I'm gonna let George talk about this because the technologies are really his of expertise and experience. But I want to note that just on the ground in LA, in Los Angeles, for instance, that replaced many thousands of streetlights. It replaced an HPS LED that had 68%, used 68% less energy. In Portland, Oregon, in residential communities, when they did their conversion to LEDs, they used LED fixtures that were wattage levels that were 75% lower than they were replacing. So, I mean, it's just the lights on the market today, the LEDs on the market have a really high efficacy. And the choice of fixtures by the utilities, you can just, see are not reflecting that. But George, do you want to add to that?
Sure. The Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, IESNA, publishes what's called the RP8 and the 2014 version, so it's referred to as RP8-14. It provides guidelines for illumination levels based on road classification and pedestrian conflict levels. The unfortunate thing with the RP8 guidelines is it doesn't take into account how the human eye interacts or how the human eye sees under different quality of light. So it assumes that a lumen from one light is the same as a lumen from another light. But the fact of the matter is, when your light source has a higher color rendering index, the human eye actually sees better and needs less lumens for the same visual clarity. And one complaint that you'll read about with LED lights is they're too bright, and that's a function of glare. See, it's very difficult to get on the fact that the LED light is somewhat intense. As we age, the effect of the white light on light scatter within the human eye is increased, and glare becomes what they call disability. It's kind of your windshield when it gets dirty and the sun shining on that windshield. It reduces your visibility, not increases. So there's a careful balance that needs to be struck in selecting the right amount of lighting from an LED to get what you need for public safety. I've done this for 16 years. I've done over 100,000 streetlights, and I say that the method I've used to make these choices has resulted in virtually very, very few complaints. I mean, I did a town of 1,500 lights, and we had one complaint, and most everybody was very satisfied. So, what you can look at the RP8 guidelines, use those to help you kind of make some choices. But there's also some software that you can use to do calculations to determine the amount of foot candles that'll wind up on the roadway. But the recommendation is always that you're off to go lower rather than higher for a lot of reasons, particularly for public satisfaction.
Of course, we do hear a phone ring. I don't know if someone out there can work on that. Okay, so we have a question from Carla Castillo, who is our fabulous Clean Energy Communities Coordinator in the Hudson Valley. And her job is to learn an incredible amount of information about how a lot of NYSERDA programs work together and then guide municipalities toward the best way to access programs. So you're doing a fabulous job, and she wants to know, how does the consortium and NYPA work together? Now, Nina, you did have a slide on that. I'll hand it over to you, but just to say that the group that works on street lighting was the first group we sat down with, and on, I think it was June 1st. We are, again, on a parallel track with them, and their offering will be part of the options report that Jen and Nina and George are working on. Nina, is there anything you want to add?
So I think we view our job as information to municipalities about the full range of options available to them. And NYPA is obviously an important resource for municipalities for a wide range of energy-related projects. So we tend to help make sure that municipalities understand exactly what NYPA can provide, the support that they can provide. And then of our project, we would like to support municipalities in making whatever choice is the best choice for them in terms of affecting this project in a way that matches the priorities and resources within that community. So we're in very close contact with NYPA. We'll be sharing lots of information about the way they work, studies of municipalities that they've worked with, and we'll be sharing information about other ways that municipalities can move forward as well, so that municipalities understand the whole menu of choices available to them, including, of course, NYPA. And as said, Pat, our meeting with NYPA was the very first meeting that we had on the very first day that this project started. So we've certainly been collaborating closely with them.
Thank you, Nina. Doreen Davis, shout out to you. We're looking forward to speaking with you later in the month. You had asked a terrific question. So, Doreen, to George, there has been some pushback by environmentally conscious members of her community regarding LEDs, saying that they're not good for humans or animals. Can you?
And you know, this is a fascinating subject, and it relates back to some degree to the article the AMA, the American Medical Association, put out about the blue light that exists within LED lighting. But let's back up for a minute. The issue of nighttime lighting in terms of its effect on animals, on plant growth, on humans, is not a new issue. It's been around for years and years and years, but we're now doing more research and learning more about the impacts that nighttime lighting has on human health, sleep patterns. But the fact of the matter is the biggest problem is not the light that's out on the roadway. The biggest problem is your computer, the light you have inside your house, your laptop, your television. The fact of the matter is you would have to take a street light and sit beneath it for 2.5 hours before it would affect your melatonin levels. And the advantage that you have with an LED light is take an existing 70-watt high-pressure sodium lamp that produces about 6,300 lumens, and you can replace that with an LED light It only uses 2,200 lumens, and you can direct that light so that it gets predominantly on the street and not scattered all over the place. In addition to that, you can control the color temperature of that light. You can select the warmer color temperatures, which MA recommends. Use backlight protection to reduce the amount of light that's trespasses onto private property or onto property. So LEDs actually offer a partial solution to this problem. They are not the problem. And after the AMA came out with their article, there's also been an enormous amount of pushback from the DOE, from the Middle Solid State Lighting Consortium, and other entities talking about the fact that LED light is actually a solution, not a problem. And AMA's focus was rather narrow. To that, I would point out, for example, now the family of warmer color temperatures that the AMA is recommending is energy efficient and have shorter lifespans. So it means we have to produce more electricity and more emissions in order to power that light. So we look only at the light and you don't consider the total ramifications of the recommendation, then I think you're being a little bit irresponsible. That said, it certainly should have an impact on your decision. So the type of light you choose and how you install it. And this goes back to the point I made a little bit ago. You're sometimes better to go lower than higher. We'll say that is one. If you look back historically at street lighting, we started out with incandescent light bulbs in radio wave and Admiral's hat style fixtures. We graduated in the 70s to the mercury vapor lamp, and the most common mercury vapor out there was a 100 watt, which produced 4,000 lumens. We typically replaced that with a 70 watt high pressure sodium that produced 6,300 lumens. And so what the utilities were doing was trying to protect their, so they're interested in selling electrons, not in providing optimum lighting. So what's seen is a gradual increase in the amount of light levels we have out there, to the point where in some cases it's actually obnoxious and excessive. And so, these are concerns that we all should have, and we should use them and balance those concerns with a good design.
I have to add to or I guess emphasize really the point about getting the wattage levels right. That's really the key thing. And I wish I had this visual to share with you all. It will be in the options report of these pictures of taken up above the city of LA from a ridge that showed, showed the lighting when half of the conversion had been done. So you see, in the area where the old HPS lights were still, the light pollution was unbelievable, and where the LEDs had been installed, it was, from a sky perspective, much darker from the level above. And again, it's because of the directional nature of the LEDs, but also making sure you're getting the wattage levels correct. And a number of communities, early movers on LEDs, gotten complaints from the public about that brightness, and had a number of communities had moved, including in New York City and elsewhere, had moved to reduce the wattage. Again, you have to learn from experiences, and really keep an eye on today's technologies and the constantly improving efficacy of those technologies, and make sure we're installing the right lights.
All right, so we're getting a lot of great questions here, including those from zoning. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hit them all, but she wants us to know, particularly George, that in central New York, where she's based, the National Grid utility-owned LED option is going to have a 3-year payback for one of the communities there. And so she definitely wanted to emphasize that. But her next question is for George. What have you seen as preferred methods of maintenance after streetlights are purchased? And municipalities mostly contracting out for maintenance, and what kind of savings are they seeing? George.
I pointed out in one of my slides, when you go to an LED system, at least so far in the first 4 or 5 years, we've seen the failure rates on these are extremely low. And that would argue for having a contractor that you can engage their services on a time and materials basis. For precious sodium and HID systems, the way I've structured those kinds of contracts is based on a fixed price per light per month. I do that way because the contractor then is incentivized to use high quality materials. If he's going to be out to replace a light bulb in a HID fixture, he can go ahead and put up the $4 photocell at the same time because he doesn't get paid any extra to have to go back. It's to his benefit to service the light once and then not have to service it again for a long time because he's not going to be paid any extra. But LED lights, take for example the town of Fairhaven with 1,400 street lights. Over the last 4 years have had 6 fail. And its costs have gone from $18,000 a year to about $2,000 a year. They have a contractor that they engage to do that. Now, some communities have qualified electricians that could receive the required training. They could do the work in-house. But for the most part, I've engaged the services of private contractors to do that work. And normally the way I do it is the contractor that we hire to do the installation has a 3-year contract, which includes a follow-on maintenance contract where he provides those services to the community after the project is finished.
And George, are there any studies regarding the degradation of LED output over time? Is there still concern regarding LED color stability?
Yes. In fact, the DOE recently released a study that was done in Yuma, Arizona at the border, which is being studied. But what you're talking about is dirt, what they refer to as dirt lumen depreciation. We expect some degradation of the output of the light. Of course, it depends on the environment that the light's in. In Yuma, Arizona, in the desert, they've got a lot of blowing sand. But in a city where there's trees and the like, the problems are different. It's severe, you're talking 4 or 5%. The other question I would ask you, funny how we address all of these things, and I go out to cities and towns and I look at the lights, and some of them are so dirty, not really putting any light at all. Most of it is trapped inside the fixture, and I can tell you the utility doesn't have a program to go out there and clean these things. So it's funny to me that now we're going to LEDs, people are starting to worry about all that sort of thing, when the price in LED is substantially less.
Thank you, George. So we're just going to be wrapping up maybe one more question, but before I forget, Nina reminded me, we're always being asked, understandably, next steps. So we have figured out at this point is that we really want to operate at 2 speeds, kind of. We have a clear, large educational role. We're helping communities that are just starting to think about this issue, but we also want to be very attentive and inclusive for communities that are ready to go. So on that note, on November 30th, we are having a workshop in Westchester, and it will be followed by a look at the LED streetlight pilot project in the village of Scarsdale. The group that we're convening there, they own their streetlights already because they're in Con Edison territory, and that's how it works. And so they are looking to move forward with purchasing LEDs in the very near term. So if you're hearing this and that's your municipality situation, look out for the information on our November 30th workshop. I think we have time for one more question, and it comes from our friend Denny Calais in Hook. George, if purchasing existing fixtures, is there residual value that is realized in replacing them, or is the assumption that they incur a disposal cost?
The answer is yes and no. Typically, what contractors will do is they will take down the fixture. They then hire hourly labor to dismantle the fixtures into the various components and recycle the aluminum, they recycle the copper, they recycle the glass. The existing high-pressure sodium lamps have to be treated as hazardous waste, so they need to be disposed of properly. So all it's done by the contractor, and it's done at essentially no cost because the value of the recyclable materials offsets the costs associated with the work.
Okay. All right, I think that's all we have time for at 10:30 this morning. So thank you all. We will be sending out the slides, and I have captured all your questions here. So if we didn't answer them just now, we will make the effort to answer you personally and through email. All right, thank you so much, and have a good day.